Far beyond the cities, beyond the towns and villages, there is a land that time has forgotten, that appears today much as it did millions of years ago. A land that abounds in all manner of wild things, where animals still rule the earth, and seasons bring with them life and death. Where millions of creatures, large and small, live out their lives in a last great Eden. Here, man comes to behold and wonder. A zoologist surveys its vast horizons, home to the greatest concentration of large mammals in the world. A renowned naturalist and photographer marks this, his 30th year, as a witness to the unfolding of its daily drama. A man of enduring curiosity, he has captured in pictures and on film a remarkable journal of this paradise he calls home. In the shadow of their sacred mountain, a people too have called this place home for generations. A venerable people who have moved their ancient culture toward the 21st century. They have long tended cattle on these fertile plains. A link with their future, one native son returns to his childhood home from a distant world, to be among his people and to partake in a homecoming that will change them both forever. Here, a reunion of the spirit celebrates man and this kingdom in which he lives. Join us now as we chronicle the personal landscapes of those who call this place home, who share it with the wild creatures, this land called Serengeti.
To better understand our world, ourselves, and our future, this program is made possible by the people of Chevron. Chevron, giving thought to television.
Additional funding provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
The Serengeti, a vast expanse of earth and sky that rises and falls for thousands of square miles across a massive plateau, 5,000 feet high. Although first seen by Europeans in the late 1800s, it was established only in 1951 as a national park, a haven for the wild creatures that live here, a commemoration of the way it looked when humankind was young. Now, man has set aside this ageless landscape, where the herds still move as they have for thousands of years. Situated in the East African nation of Tanzania, Serengeti National Park and its environs comprise the Serengeti ecosystem, an area defined by the migration of the great herds of wildebeest. Together, they cover 10,000 square miles. Miles to the south of the park, Tanzanians come to market to buy and sell the harvest from nearby farms.
Let's see what we need. Do you need any eggs?
Famed wildlife photographer and naturalist Baron Hugo van Lawick, accompanied by his son, shops for provisions for his Serengeti camp, a day's drive by Land Rover. Negotiating in fluent Swahili produces smiles and lower prices. Returning from business trips abroad, Hugo van Lawick often passes through this village, en route to the camp he established years before as a base for his work. Coming to Africa from the Netherlands at age 22, Hugo carried little more than a compelling desire to photograph wild things. To his good fortune, he soon met famed anthropologist Dr. Louis Leakey. In 1962, Leakey would send the young photographer to film a new study of chimpanzees conducted by Jane Goodall, one of Leakey's former assistants. In 1964, Jane and Hugo were married. In the coming years, their field observations and Hugo's photographic record would document previously unknown behavior of the remarkable apes. Their son, Baron Hugo van Lawick IV, nicknamed Grub, was born and raised in Africa and spent his early life around chimps and baboons. Although his parents divorced in 1974, Grub still spends time in Tanzania with each of them.
See great long threads between them.
Now he returns with his father to familiar terrain, and together they travel to Hugo's camp called Ndutu, which in the language of the local Masai means a peaceful place.
I kept the camp at Ndutu canvas and very simple buildings and purpose. I've noticed often that if you put up a single building here in Africa, then very quickly it becomes a little village and the whole area then changes. And the last thing I want to do is to be a cause of changing this place. I would like it to remain as it is.
The Serengeti endures today as it has through the centuries, as predators and prey maintain their ancient system of checks and balances. Two and a half million animals weave the delicate fabric of Serengeti's life. Hugo van Lawick seeks to understand animal behavior and the relationships between Serengeti's wildlife and their environment.
Jambo bwana.
Asante sana.
Asante.
So, I'd like to go here and right up here.
Yeah.
There's an enormous variety in the landscapes here. And this is rolling sort of country and acacia tree country.
To travel such long distances, Hugo plans carefully for tomorrow's photographic safari.
I don't think I've ever been there before, have I?
Yes, actually you have, but you were only 2 years old then.
Oh.
And we spent about 4 weeks camping.
Cyrili, in charge of camp staff, is also the cook.
When I established my camp, I was keen to be able to spend as much time as possible on actual photography. For that reason, I took on Tanzanian staff. And we've really become a sort of family. This case can fit.
In a world where spare parts are hard to come by, 2 mechanics work full-time to keep Van Lawick's only means of mobility finely tuned. Without the Land Rover, there would be no expedition. Foot safaris are far too dangerous. A rose-colored veil on a distant lake attracts the experienced eye. Flamingos by the thousands feed in the alkaline waters.
Oh, it's amazing how these birds are accepting you. You want to try and get a bit closer?
Yeah, why not?
Yes, just move slowly forward, then lie down, go up to those little pools or something.
Patience is essential in the art of wildlife photography, as Grub learns in the footsteps of his father.
I've been through various stages in my photography. I started off as what I call an artistic photographer. Insofar I was interested in composition, I was interested in beautiful light. I then became much more interested in animal behavior. So what became very important to me is recording this behavior. And then recently I've turned back more to artistic type of photography, trying to combine the two, trying to get behavior and beautiful scenery and beautiful light.
Van Lawick's finely honed talent as a photographer, combined with a tenacity for hours of animal observation, result in his capture of remarkable scenes, like this hyena catching flamingos. It is October, the end of the dry season. The short grass plains lie parched beneath the equatorial sun. The wildebeest sense the onset of rain and start to move where new grass will sprout. Storm clouds begin to build and herald the season of short rains. Water rejuvenates man and beast alike, and soon it will transform the Serengeti into a carpet of grass. For now, it simply must be endured. Often, the blessing of rain can be disastrous. Flash floods swell creeks from trickles into raging torrents. Once, during a downpour, Van Lawick came upon a herd of migrating wildebeest, desperate to cross. In their panic, hundreds drowned in the overpowering current. When the waters subsided, they plodded on toward green grazing lands.
One of the advantages of living in one area among wildlife for so long is that you get to know a lot of the animals that live here so well, and you're able to anticipate where to be at a certain time to have a chance to photograph them. For many years, I hardly photographed elephants, but then I decided I wanted to spend some time with them. I noticed within a week that they actually recognized my individual car and trusted me more than the tourist cars. The result was that I could be in among 100 elephants, some within touching distance, and get good photography.
From his long hours of close observation, Van Lawick has rewritten old concepts of individual animal behavior.
In the science of animal behavior, originally, individuals were not considered important. It was the species that was important. But I've always been interested in individuals. I remember watching an inexperienced jackal mother who wanted to move her 3 cubs to a new den, but she was inexperienced insofar that she didn't really know how to carry her cubs. And so she pulled them out of the den by their tail and carried them by their tail to the new den.
Van Lawick tracked and observed a pack of wild dogs for 4 years and produced a landmark film that revealed their complex social organization and behavior as never seen before.
Each wild animal is a distinct individual with its own personality. And this can affect the rest of the group. For instance, in wild dogs, the first pack I watched used to hunt zebras. I later discovered this was purely due to 2 wild dogs, which were larger than the others and which could manage to hold a zebra still if they caught it. Once those dogs died, the whole hunting behavior after zebras died out. And so here were 2 individuals which were affecting the behavior of the pack. Somebody once said to me, "You've lived here for 30 years. Haven't you done everything you can on the Serengeti?" I haven't even scratched the surface. Not on a single species have I scratched the surface.
After 3 decades of work in Africa, a lifetime of discovery still lies ahead for Hugo Van Lawick, and the perfect picture seems always just beyond reach.
It's a feeling if you're camping on your own that you're the only person in the world. It's totally peaceful around you. Of course, that's very deceptive because actually it's very dangerous around you. But that's not the feeling you normally get until a lion roars. It's an enormous place, the Serengeti, and I'll never forget one day when I was standing on top of a hill looking over the short grass plains, which seemed to stretch on forever there. And a local Masai walked up to me. And to my amazement, he said, "It's a big place, isn't it?" And Serengeti in Masai means an extended place. But it surprised me because he'd lived there all his life. I would have thought by now he would have just accepted it. This is what the Serengeti does to you.
The lure of Africa has long drawn explorers to its exotic landscapes. Following the footsteps of early traders and missionaries, Western adventurers began a steady trek to experience it firsthand. Ernest Hemingway would write, "Now being in Africa, I was hungry for more of it. The changes of the seasons, the names of the trees, of the small animals and all the birds." On flying over it, famed aviator Beryl Markham would note, "The Serengeti lay beneath me like a bowl whose edges were the ends of the earth." A president, too, would leave his cabinet long enough to bag its prized possessions. For a time, the big game safari was the hunter's hottest ticket. As world opinion changed, trophy hunting was looked on with disfavor, and in 1951, the last safari of hunters walked out of Serengeti. Then in 1957, a pioneering team of naturalists from Germany, concerned for Serengeti's future, arrived in their single-engine plane. Dr. Bernhard Jimmick, director of the Frankfurt Zoo, and his son, Michael, would fly the length and breadth of the park to help create a long-range plan for its preservation. At first, they experimented with methods to capture animals, long since perfected. Before the refinement of the dart gun, animals were caught by hand in order to attach identification collars. It was the only way to distinguish one animal from the next and to trace patterns of migration. Their primary goal, a census of the scattered herds of wildebeest, could be accomplished only from the air. Day after day, they flew grid patterns from horizon to horizon. Their study laid the groundwork for a new approach to the conservation and management of Serengeti National Park. But their efforts exacted a heavy toll. In this land he worked so hard to preserve, Michael Jimmick lost his life when his plane fell to earth. Since the Jimmick's research, the numbers of wildebeest have grown sevenfold to 1.5 million, the largest population of migrating animals on Earth. Counting them is still done from the air as part of a project to monitor Serengeti's wildlife. Every 2 years, a new census is taken by Dr. Marcus Borner of the Frankfurt Zoological Society.
The subunit 1 begins now.
Through rods mounted on the struts of the plane, his assistants estimate the number of animals below and record the figures on audio tape. Every 30 seconds, Dr. Borner takes a photograph. The count will provide the distribution, density, and movement of the herds. The pictures will show the vegetation, erosion, and any human activity.
Okay, next transact is transact number 5.
Each time I'll personally fly over this great migration of the wildebeest, I feel very strongly that it is great that there's still a place in the world where an ecosystem is still relatively untouched by human influence. A place on the earth where there is animals from one horizon to the other. We are trying to support management in all kinds of things. That was always very much in Professor Jimmick's mind. A bit of research that is really related to the management of the park. We do that very gladly because we are convinced that what the government is doing here, they have a very enlightened conservation policy. The government of Tanzania spends about 2 to 3 times as much of their gross national product than the United States does on their national parks. It shows how serious the government here is to keep these areas, to manage these areas, and I think they're very determined. They don't have maybe big monuments like the temple in Greece or other monuments. For them, the monuments they have are areas like the Serengeti.
At park headquarters, Dr. Borner meets with Bernard Maregesi, the chief park warden, and shares the information from his recent survey.
How are things? We are just coming back from the census, and it will take quite a long time, a few weeks to analyze properly. But what we wanted to come and report to you is...
Such cooperation between scientists and officials is important to the sound management of this diverse environment.
And what we suspect, that they might be reacting to poaching pressure in the central part here in the woodlands. We can't give numbers, but it seems that about 1,000 have moved up north here, where they're better protected.
I will ask Mr. Magombi to send some rangers there to make sure that they are well protected, especially in the northern.
Although Tanzania is a struggling third world nation, it maintains a strong commitment to conserve its natural resources.
The Tanzanians as a nation considers this wildlife as a national heritage. But it doesn't mean that this is our own heritage. It is also a heritage for every mankind all over the world.
Despite government efforts, trophy poaching, especially the killing of elephants for their ivory and rhinoceros for their horn, occurs inside the park. In the last decade, 90% of Serengeti's rhinoceros have been slaughtered. Only a few survive. More than half of the park's elephants have been killed, and now only some 500 remain. Along the northern edge of the park, local hunters poach animals not for trophies, but for meat to sell. As elsewhere, there are no fences to keep animals in, nor people out. Only a line on the earth marks the boundary between two worlds. The Tanzanian government employs some 85 anti-poaching rangers to police the park for illegal activity. This patrol finds evidence of a meat poaching operation. Pits and snares are intended for unwary animals. These are expert trackers, and the poachers now become the prey.
This is the Ganyas. Transport? Yes, for the state.
The culprits are caught with the butchered carcasses of antelope and warthog. They had established this small base to prepare the hides and dry the meat for sale at a local market. The average yearly income of these men would normally be the equivalent of about $160 American. But in just the 3 to 4 months that migrating animals are in this area, they can more than double the amount by poaching. Instead, these men will be tried in court and may go to prison. As settlements press Serengeti's perimeter, poaching continues, and the government is now considering a new program. It proposes to open areas within the game reserves that surround the park, where hunting wildlife will be allowed on a limited basis. It will not be the first time the needs of the people have been recognized. In 1959, Serengeti's boundaries were redrawn to create the Ngorongoro Conservation Area for the protection of the wildlife and the welfare of the tribe called Masai. Believed to be descendants of tribes from northern Africa, The Masai migrated southward along the Nile River and settled in East Africa about 400 years ago. With them, they brought a culture of strong family traditions and a social order that revolves around the keeping of livestock. In 1860, German missionary Dr. Ludwig Krapf wrote that the Masai live entirely on milk, butter, honey, and the meat of cattle, goats, and sheep. Today, little appears to have changed. With no system of cash economy, the measure of a man's wealth is still the number of cattle he owns. Devoted herders, Masai continue to live in ngangs or settlements side by side with their cattle. In the Tanzanian city of Arusha, one Masai leaves the bustle of this urban village to return to his people.
To be living in two worlds is not easy. So I've developed this notion that I'll take the best of the West and retain the best of my tradition.
Tepilit Ole Saitoti was the subject of the 1972 National Geographic television special, Man of the Serengeti. Years before, he was the first member of his family to be sent away to school. On this occasion, he visited the classroom where once he'd been so frightened.
Good morning, children. How do you do?
How do you do? Thank you.
Sit down.
Thank you, sir.
When my father first said that you're the one going to go to school, first question was, what is school? And he says, place far away from your brothers and sisters, far away from everybody, of alien people. Oh, it was the most painful thing. And I say, why me? And he says, I know those who will come back and those who will not. And this one will, and that's why I'm sending him.
What did Gangwa do?
Saitoti did come back, but after years in America and with a master's degree from the University of Michigan. Today, Saitoti is given a lift home by old acquaintance Hugo van Lawick. He recounts their first chance meeting many years before.
Something happened. The herd stampeded right ahead of him. Later on, I saw this boy running from a distance, not the guy who had been wounded, because that one started losing blood profusely. He lost a lot of blood, so he was weak within a matter of... The lion just worked on him and left him. So we knew completely the guy would lose blood soon and he would be weak. He won't be able to walk. And that exactly happened. So I started running to the village. And I was the only one who spoke Swahili and English in the area. So I was told that you have to go all the way to Likis to see whether you can get medicine or transportation to help us carry this person to the hospital. And that's when I came and I found you.
To Likis camp? That was in the early 60s. That was you.
Yeah, that's me.
Heavens, I never realized that. Yes, I remember it. I remember this young boy and the man running into the camp and telling me that one of your people had been attacked by a lion, grabbing the medicine chest, and then we drove for miles and treated this man with a big gash in his thigh. Is that right?
Yes.
How old were you then?
I was about 17.
Yes, and I was about, I suppose I was 22. Yeah. So what are you doing now?
I'm attending this ceremony, which is making me a senior elder.
But you are an elder already.
Yeah, I was a junior elder, and now this is the final confirmation of confirming me to a senior elder.
I didn't realize that that was divided into junior elders and senior elders.
Now he returns to his people who will benefit from these experiences, while he participates in an elaborate ceremony important to Masai men. Saitoti is greeted first by the women and children of his village. It is considered respectful to bow and receive a blessing on the head.
I always really terribly look forward to, of course, to come here. Apart from the calmness of the countryside, the beauty of the landscape, and of course my children, my people at large. I always really look forward to come home. And there's always amazing serenity of peace when I come here.
Members of Saitoti's family live in the community called Albalbal, nestled on a slope overlooking Serengeti's rolling plains. Like all Masai, they know by name each cow, bull, and ox, and love them as they love their children. Milk is the foundation of the Masai diet and is consumed either fresh or in a sour yogurt form. Saitoti's wife, Masienda, helps with the milking before day begins. Cattle remain inside at night for protection against marauding leopards and lions. The thornbush fence is opened so they can move out to graze.
Masai cattle is life. I remember there was a time I was in the United States. I had a girlfriend I liked, and I told her, I'll give you a cow. And she felt really offended. A cow? And I was totally hurt, because for Masai, a cow is the utmost, our survival. They even say any food without milk is not food. Without a cow, a Masai wouldn't live, you know.
With a boyhood friend, Saitoti surveys his own herd nearby, tended by his nephews. Masai are taught that they are the sole custodians of all the earth's cattle, as decreed by their god Ngai. But change has come to rural Tanzania with more farms, villages, and people. The nomadic Masai no longer roam as far with their herds in search of water. And during the dry season, the scarcity of water threatens the well-being of the cattle. Water is a problem for the people too. Every day, women and girls walk 3 miles to collect the precious resource from a spring. Without it, sanitary conditions worsen, leading to disease and death, especially among the elderly and the very young. Saitoti is worried. For lack of water, the future of his people is in jeopardy.
Water is life to us here. We have a small stream here, right by my village, which we share with baboons. It's a little tiny thing. And the dry season, the water practically become a drizzle. We have to wait for hours. For us, it's a necessity of life.
Once, a pipeline brought water to the Albalbal community, and this trough was full. But thirsty elephants that smelled the water in the pipes destroyed them, and the trough has been empty ever since. Appeals for repairs fell on deaf ears. Searching abroad, Saitoti secured $250,000 from the African Development Foundation for a project to provide drinking water year-round to people and livestock. As project coordinator, Saitoti explains to village elders the plans to rebuild the system and run a new pipeline from a permanent spring 15 miles away.
It's amazing to work with my people, having been away for a long time. I usually have the village leaders to work closely with me. We all work as a team, because they need this water.
Work will soon begin to clear the brush and dig the long trench in which to bury the pipeline. It is the day of the Olkiteng Lorba, the naming ceremony, and the women adorn themselves for the event. Saitoti now undergoes a ritual that precedes all Masai naming ceremonies, the traditional shaving of the head. Masienda will perform the rite using only a razor blade. She anoints his head with milk, symbolic of the relationship between the Masai and their cattle. Saitoti asks for extra caution when shaving near his throat. Even the eyebrows must go before the transformation is complete. Shaving his head symbolizes cleansing. Masai men as well as women have their ears pierced at an early age. In the robes of an elder, Saitoti takes on a regal appearance, befitting of the new name soon to be bestowed on him.
It's up to the elders of the ceremony to pick a symbolic religious name which will benefit not only me but the Masai at large.
His father, Leme Koki Olengia, is the senior member of the village. On seeing his reflection, his father asks, "Have I really become so old?"
My father is my idol. He's the guy who molded me. He's tough sometimes, but any man with a large family like the one we have, of 64 children and 8 wives, must be tough to see that the family stay together. And he does it, and he does it with style.
Ilmoran, the young warriors, arrive from neighboring villages to pay their respect to the honoree. An ox, selected from the herd for its good condition and color, is led away by the men to a secluded spot. It is suffocated with the dress of an unmarried woman, an act performed only on such special occasions. The throat is slit and a trough is made with the flesh of the dewlap. Milk and honey beer are mixed with the blood that collects. Warriors and elders drink from the mixture in a kind of communion. The ox is butchered and roasted for the entire village and guests. The better cuts of meat go to the senior elders. Special pieces from the chest of the ox will be used in the climax of the ceremony. Saitoti's father arrives to pronounce the blessing and give Saitoti his new name.
My father always blessed me. Live long, my son. May people whom you meet like you. May you return back to us, to the shelter of your family who loves you. May you be blessed.
The ceremony now complete, Saitoti rejoins his people with a new name, Olotushulu, the unifier, an appropriate name for a man who bridges the gap between his people and the outside world. Before day's end, a game is played over a skewer of meat. Men and women junior elders chase each other away from the prize with whips made of tree branches. It's a rare opportunity for the women to beat their husbands. The stomach of the ox becomes a seat for Saitoti, his mother, and his wife for a final blessing. These spontaneous invocations bond the family and are a fitting conclusion to this memorable day.
The Masai have poetry, which we call ewoko. We praise the landscape and the cattle, and even the warriors, the beauty of it all.
Man has lived in Serengeti for thousands of years. Perhaps never before has he so cherished its distant horizons. But its serenity is beset by forces that would alter its ecology and threaten its wildlife. There are some who want the land to farm and feed themselves. Some want to exploit its wildlife for personal gain, while others dedicate their energies and wits to protect it. Marcus Borner respects Tanzania's commitment.
It is the African nations who decide on the future of these parks. After independence, they have created 10 new national parks. And it's not because Professor Chimik told them to do so. That is something that comes from within their tradition and their country.
For Hugo van Lawick, Serengeti has become a way of life.
I prefer being on the Serengeti. You get a feeling you're one with nature, you belong here, you're just a small part of it, really. While in cities, I think you get a feeling that only man is important. But in fact, we're all part of nature, and if we destroy these things, if we destroy nature, then we're destroying ourselves. I have no doubt about it.
Olotushulu, the unifier, is joined by warriors to clear the way for their future.
Now I have a yearning of wanting to help my people. Just the basics of life. A clinic, water like the one I'm trying to build, a school so they can move with the rest of Tanzania. The people must not live in isolation. Their destiny will not be in their hands. So I want the Masai to participate like any Tanzanians in every endeavor the Tanzanians are pursuing.
For such men, the preservation of Serengeti has profound meaning. In the solitude and tranquility of this extended place, they hearken to the charge of Michael Jimmick, who rests here for eternity. Serengeti shall not die.
Stay tuned for American Playhouse next at 8 on Channel 10.
To better understand our world, ourselves, and our future, this program was made possible by the people of Chevron. Chevron, giving thought to television.
Additional funding was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.